Hello, here we are to look on to the idea called kinked demand curve in the arena of economics. Let's have a detailed look on to the same. So in the very beginning, we'll be moving on to the meaning of the idea called kinked demand curve. After that, I'll be taking you to the evolution of the concept. And after this, we will be finding the assumptions and features related to the idea of kinked demand curve. Later on we will be considering the diagrammatic explanation of kinked demand curve, and then we will move on to the limitations part of kinked demand curve, and finally we will be concluding the session. So in the very beginning, as far as the meaning of kinked demand curve is concerned, we could find that this is something that would be happening in the oligopolistic market. So what is so special about oligopolistic market? It is a market structure with a few firms. Okay. So it's a market with some few firms specializing in the production of certain commodities. We think that as far as few firms are concerned in a particular market structure, these few firms will be having something called interdependence. Okay. So why these firms are having interdependence? This is so because whenever there is some change in the price of the commodity produced by one firm, definitely that will be making changes in the behavior of the other firms, because the other firms would also be changing the price of its product, because we are talking about substitute commodities. Okay. So as far as the kinked demand curve concept in oligopolistic market is concerned, it will be illustrating an idea called price rigidity. So what does it mean by price rigidity? It tells that price in the oligopolistic market would remain rigid, or it will be more or less fixed. How will this happen? We are going to discuss the reasons for the same. The main reason here is that the firms in the oligopolistic market structure will be dealing with different elasticity of demands at different price levels. So this is the main reason that will be finally driving the economy, or finally driving the market to have a fixed price scenario or the price rigidity. And this is something that is so special with respect to oligopolistic market structure. Now, we could find that if a particular firm in the oligopolistic market structure increasing the price. So I'll give you first of all a hypothetical situation of an oligopolistic market structure. So just assume that there are four firms, A, B, C and D. So all these firms are producing something called substitute commodities. Okay. Now assume that a particular firm called firm A. So what firm A is doing is that firm A is increasing the prices of its product. Now, when firm A is increasing the prices of its product, what will happen to other firms? This is what we have to consider. So when firm A is increasing the price of the product, you can talk about first of all the consumer's case. The consumers of this particular product of firm A will be reducing their demand for this product. Why? Because the price has increased, isn't it? So demand will come down because the price has increased. Now what happens is that this will be making the reduction demand for the product of firm A will be making the consumers to switch over to the product produced by other firms. So the demand for product of B, C and D will be increasing in this instance, and the demand for product produced by firm A will be falling. So here we could find that when firm A is increasing the prices of its product, the other rival firms will not be increasing the price of their products. And ultimately what will happen to firm A? Firm A will be losing customers. So it will be having a loss of its market share. It will be losing a part of its market, and for the same reason it will be having a loss. So for the same reason, firm A now knows that if at all it is increasing price, it will be creating some issues. So if it increases price, it will create some issues for firm A. So it will think that it's better not to increase the price. So price in that way will be remaining as fixed. Now, what will happen if firm A is reducing the price? Assume that firm A is reducing the price of its product. Now what happens? If firm A is reducing the price of its product, as far as consumers are concerned, they could find that price for this product has been reduced and demand for the product of firm A will be increasing, then what will happen to firm A? Firm A will gain a lot of market, isn't it? So it will be gaining market. Now, if firm A is gaining market, what will the other firms do? What will the other rival firms like B, C and D will do here? B, C and D will also be reducing the price. B, C and D would also reduce their prices. Why this is happening? Because they could find that firm A is gaining the market, but automatically it means that B, C and D, they are losing the market. So they never want to have a loss in the scenario. So they would also be reducing the price to match the price reduction of what has done by firm A. So altogether, the prices in the market for this kind of a product will be coming down. So what will be the scenario? Here we will be dealing with some minimal gain for the firms. So no firm will be gaining anything much, because we are talking about a scenario where all the firms will be ultimately arriving at a lower price to sell their product. So it's a minimal loss. It's a minimal gain that happens. It is a loss-making scenario. So again, firm A would also think that, okay, why should I unnecessarily reduce the price of my product? So if I reduce the price of my product, definitely my rival firms will be following me. And for the same reason, I might not be able to gain something in the long run. In the long run, I will not be gaining. Only in the short run, I might be gaining something. So this kind of a thought will be making firm A to stick on to the original price. So it will not be increasing the price, and also it will not be reducing the price. It knows it very well that if it is increasing the price, other firms will not be following, and for the same reason, firm A will have a loss. It will be losing the market share. And firm A thinks in this way also. It will think like this: if it is reducing the price of its product, the other rival firms will also follow the same decision, and ultimately firm A will not be having any long-term gains. So for these reasons, firm A will not be changing its price. So for the same reason, the price will be remaining as constant, or for the same reason, price will be fixed or rigid in the market. Okay. Now, coming to the evolution of the idea of price rigidity, the concept has been introduced by a famous economist, Paul M. Sweezy, and it was in the 1930s that he was introducing this idea, and he was talking about the behavior of oligopolistic firm in a non-collusive scenario. So what happens is that in a non-collusive scenario, firms will be following something called stability with respect to their prices. Because we are talking about oligopoly with a few firms, here what happens is that price would be rigid, okay, or else price would be fixed, or else price would be just remaining as constant. So it might not be changing. If at all it is changing, it will be again coming to another fixed level, or again it will be coming to another rigid level. So this is something that we could find. Okay, so most probably in an oligopolistic market structure, price will be just as rigid as it is, just as fixed as it is. Now, coming to the assumptions of price rigidity, or the Kinked demand curve concept given by Paul M. Sweezy. So he is assuming an oligopolistic market structure. It's a market structure with a few firms. Okay, with less number of firms. And for the same reason, as I was telling you earlier, all the existing firms will be interdependent. So any decision taken by one firm, decision by one firm will influence. So this will influence the behavior of other firms. Okay, so there exists something called interdependence in an oligopolistic market structure. Again, price would be rigid. So price would be fixed. It will not be going up or it will not be going down, because the firms or the particular firm that is going for change in price will know the repercussions, the consequences for having a price change. So for the same reason, firms in the oligopolistic market structure will make the price fixed. It will not be increasing the price, it will not be reducing the price. It will remain as rigid or fixed. Now, I'm taking you to the features of Kinked demand curve. So for the same reason, we can have an explanation by having a pictorial representation of the Kinked demand curve. So we can have the quantity demanded measured along the x-axis and prices measured along the y-axis. Okay, so if you look at this particular diagram, what you could find is that this is a demand curve, and this is not same as a typical demand curve. If you know the typical demand curve, what happens is that you can have quantity along the x-axis and price along the y-axis. The typical demand curve is just a downward sloping curve, isn't it? But if you look at this particular curve, it is not as downward sloping as what you can find in a typical demand curve. Instead, it is having a kink in this particular point. So we are having a bend. And why is this bend coming? This bend is coming due to several reasons. So this bend in this demand curve, in this Kinked demand curve idea, given by columns you see to represent the price rigidity in the oligopolistic market structure, show the point at which price would be fixed. So the point of kink, at this point you can fix something called the price. So the price that is fixed in this particular scenario is PO. So in this case, we could find that PO is the price that will be prevailing in the oligopolistic market. Okay, so the corresponding quantity that we are having here is QO, definitely. So the main idea here, or the main reason here, is that at different points of this demand curve, you can consider different points of this demand curve. At these different points, you will be having different elasticities. For the sake of better understanding, you can just consider the points above the kink. So that means the points all here and also the points all here. So you can divide the demand curve into two segments. One would be the points above the kink and the next would be the points below the kink. So if you look at the points above the kink, what is happening? The points above the kink is showing more elastic part of the demand curve. So this will be making the price elasticity of demand greater than 1. So we could find that points above the kink, makes demand curve more elastic, and for the same reason what happens is that the price elasticity of demand would be greater than 1. And now what happens to the points below the kink? So when it comes to the points below the kink, what happens is that here you could find that the elasticity is less. So price is inelastic. So we could find that we could have some inelastic part of the demand curve over here, and for the same reason, the price elasticity of demand in this case would be lesser than 1. Okay, so this would be the main reason for having a kind of kink in this particular scenario of oligopolistic market structure with respect to the price fixation effect. So this is a typical diagrammatic explanation of the Kinked demand curve. So what I was telling you earlier was just a kind of sample, and this is the actual description. So what you could find is that usually in conventional setting, you will be having something called a downward sloping demand curve. So in this setting, I'm going to explain the actual scenario of oligopolistic market structure in which it will be working. Again, you are having something called quantity or output along the x-axis, and you will be having prices measured over the y-axis. Now, you could find that the demand curve, that is AD, this is the typical demand curve that we are having in an oligopolistic market structure. So it is having a kink or a bend at point B. So at point B, what happens? At point B, you are having a kink in the demand curve. Okay. Now you could have a discontinuous MR curve. So you could have a discontinuous MR curve, marginal revenue curve. So here the MR curve is having a break. After the break, it is starting from this point only. So MR curve is this, it is discontinuous. So through this discontinuous MR curve, you can have several MC curve moving on, marginal cost curve, MC1, MC2 and MC3 and so on, isn't it? Now, if you consider the actual demand curve in the oligopolistic market structure, what you could find is that, as I was already telling you, the point above the kink is more elastic, isn't it? Because it's more flatter. these points are more flatter. Why? These are more flatter for the same reason. If the prices are increasing above the king, if the price is increasing, what happens is that definitely there would be a loss of market share. There will be a loss of market share by the firm. The firm will be losing a lot of market share which it was possessing before the price hike, because now we are talking about something very sensitive. We are talking about some sensitive region. When there is little increase in price, definitely that will make the firm to lose a lot of customers here. Now, what happens below the king? Below the king, it's not that sensitive. The area is steeper, isn't it? We do have steeper part of the curve. It is less sensitive, but the problem here is that if the concerned firm is reducing the price, the other firms also would follow the price reduction, and for the same reason, it will be having a loss. So it will be having a loss in the long run. So for the same reason, so he could find that the other firms also follow. Other firms follow here. In the earlier scenario of price hike, other firms will not follow. Here, other firms will not follow. Firms not follow. But here, price reduction means other firms also follow, because other firms might be facing a loss of market share of its products. So the other firms need to compensate for the same reason. The other firms would also be reducing their prices of their product. So for the same reason, in the long run, the firm that was actually going for a price reduction in the initial scenario would be having a loss. So would be having a long-term loss. So it might be thinking like this. So what was the kind of action that I was taking? So why was I reducing the price? So if I reduce the price, definitely that was making me to have more loss. Because earlier I was selling at a higher price, I could get more profit, but now it was my action that was making me, other firms also, to reduce their prices. Now the price that is there in the market, the overall price for the substitute commodities, the prices for all the substitute commodities has now come down. Now all the firms in the oligopolistic market would be loss making. They would be loss making. Why? Because they would be selling their product at a lower price. That is why, in that sense, they are loss making. Okay, so here definitely what happens is that in an oligopolistic market structure, firms will not go for any price competition. The kind of competition that will be prevailing in the oligopolistic market structure would be only a non-price competition. This is what is told by Paul Susi through his Kinked demand curve concept. But the concept or the idea of Kinked demand curve is having a lot of limitations. Definitely, it's a wonderful idea. It was talking a lot of things regarding the way in which oligopolistic market will be behaving, the way in which oligopolistic market would be fixing the prices, etc., etc. The way in which interdependence happens in oligopolistic setting. All these things are wonderfully explained and described by Paul Susi. But that doesn't mean that this particular idea is free from limitations. So it is having a lot of limitations. So let's contour onto the depth of the limitations part of Kinked demand curve in this particular scenario. If you look at the real world, definitely you could find that all the firms would be definitely reacting to price changes. Do you think that all the firms are identically reacting to the price changes? No, right? Because we are talking about something called differences among firms. Every firm is having something called difference. Some kind of difference from other firms. Some kind of difference that will be making it different from the other firms. So sometimes it will be differences based on cost of production. Sometimes it will be differences based on some other factors. So some firms might be facing economies of scale, some other firms might be facing diseconomies of scale. So in all these respects, we could find that firms will be having differences. So though we are talking about interdependence among firms, definitely these differences can prevail, isn't it? So in real world, since we are dealing with something called complexity, since we are dealing with something called complications, we have to take into consideration these differences, and for the same reasons, all the firms will not be reacting identically to the price changes. So that is something which is a part of reality, but Susi was not at all considering this thing. Now, CUC was looking onto a static nature of the market scenario of oligopolistic structure, and for the same reason, he was not at all considering anything dynamic. So dynamic elements were neglected by Column's CUC. For the same reason, he was not at all considering the role of technology. But you know that technology is playing a wonderful role when it comes to the scenario of reality. But since Paul CC was not at all considering the technological advancement here, it is also identified as a major limitation with respect to CUC's Kinked demand curve. But in short, we could find that definitely as far as Kinked demand curve is concerned, this is something that deals with the price rigidity in the oligopolistic market. So it talks about the pricing strategies, it talks about the competition between the firms or among the firms that exist in the oligopolistic market structure. It tells that the kind of competition that will be prevailing in the oligopolistic market structure will not be a price-based competition. Instead, it would be a non-price competition. But again, you need to remember that it's having a lot of limitation, because in many instances, you could find that it is using a lot of unrealistic cases. It is using a lot of unrealistic aspects. So it tells about the high level of interdependence. Definitely, firms in the oligopolistic market structure is both, all the firms are interdependent, but to some extent, some firms will be having more advantageous situation than the other firms with respect to cost of production, with respect to technological advancement, etc. But CUC was not at all considering these factors here. So that is all for today. Now let me tell you about the Learn Economy app. You can download it and to have previous year question papers and answers, free study materials, live as well as recorded classes, and free MCQ based weekly tests. So I'll be providing the link of the same in the description box. Now coming to our free Telegram community, you can also join the same by taking the link from the description box. That is it all for today. Thank you for watching, and you can like, share and subscribe to our channel for more such videos.